That's the outhouse walk. Don't do that.
That is not an
Please
outhouse,
don't do that.
Dan.
This is fun. I'm in the show.
That's John Wayne.
That is not John Wayne.
That's John Wayne. You did it perfect.
Well, would you look at that? I'd only been in Wyoming for a day, and I'm already in the tough guy cowboy show. There was a lot more of that coming up, I tell ya. I'm here in Cheyenne, Wyoming, the state capital, where cowboys and cowgirls and a bunch of regular people live and thrive. Now, I'd never been to Wyoming before, so I was really interested to see how folks here live. What do they do? How do they survive? And most importantly, what's the culture like here? Because a lot of us don't know much about the cowboy state. I'm going to show you what it's like in the biggest city and the most unpopulated state. I promise you won't get bored. You might even be surprised by the place. I was. This is the part of the road trip I'd been looking forward to the most. So sit back, folks. This is the part you've been waiting for. We get to the real macho part of this trip, where we get to talk about manly shit the whole time. Welcome to Wyoming, the cowboy state. Woo-wee, Wyoming! This was the first moment when I got here. I drove up from Denver, which is about 90 miles south. It was everything I thought first getting to Wyoming would be. I made it! Wow! It was day 11 on this adventure before I finally made it to this state. I had never been here before. Why would I have? I mean, look at the place. Some people say Wyoming doesn't even exist. But I'm here. It's really a state. I know it's true. I was just super excited because that means there's only 3 more states that I haven't been to yet. Wyoming's no joke. It's the extreme of a lot of stuff. Land, space, peace, and quiet. How America used to be. Where they still shoot up, but not like that. There's only 578,759 people here, and it's the 10th largest state. That means there's only 6 people per square mile. It's just hard to exist here. It's a lot of high rugged terrain and deep valleys and endless plains without any trees. All the cities and towns are way spread out. So if you don't like people or you want some alone time, this is the perfect place. But not here. This is Cheyenne. It's massive for Wyoming standards. There's 65,000 people here now, and there's people moving here every week. Kinda. In the good old days, this was a stopping point for trappers and traders. Cheyenne became a city in 1867, before Wyoming was even a state. This was all Dakota territory back then. They named the place after the Cheyenne Native American tribe, which is kind of funny, because then they had to quickly build a fort here to protect everybody from the Native Americans. Eventually, the railroad showed up here, and the place started to grow pretty fast. Well, for Wyoming standards. But for a long time, there wasn't any other kind of big city in the Hostile Plains. Then more people came, and Wyoming became a state. And there you go. One time I called Cheyenne the most boring city in America, and boy did people let me have it. I mean, I wasn't wrong or anything. Wyoming in general is pretty one-dimensional. There's only 2 escalators on the whole state, and neither one of them's in Cheyenne. Now we're going to take a little tour of downtown and get to know Cheyenne pretty well. But we're going to start right here at the state capitol. Lots of big decisions are made in that building. Stuff like it's against the law to shoot a fish with a firearm, and you can't use a drone to scout out bear, and you can't tattoo a horse. Okay. Women aren't allowed to drink liquor within 5 feet of the bar? What? Okay, I think that's an old law. Actually, Wyoming was the first state to give women the right to vote. It was kind of a way to get more women here and to get more people here. It worked, I guess. And by the way, the day I was here was July 10th. And that's the date Wyoming was granted statehood.
Wyoming, Wyoming, beloved state of mine.
Of course, a lot of people don't move here. You can see why when you drive around in the real wild areas. But lately, there's more people coming. A bunch of Californians are moving to Denver, and they're ruining Denver, so there's a lot of Denver people coming up here now. And they're not too happy about that. They don't want anyone coming up here. I think they're worried they're going to try to change the politics, just like we have in other states up here. If you didn't know, this is the most Republican place on earth. 70% of the entire state votes red. They all love their guns, their individualism, their independence. And there's no hurt feelings up here. Nobody cares if you're offended in Wyoming. There ain't no long-term welfare up here. Folks in Wyoming will make you feel like shit if they know you're sucking on the government teat too long. You're expected to work, damn it, and take pride in yourself. Stand up straight, be a good person, and help your neighbor. Too bad a lot of the country doesn't feel like that anymore. Huh. And guess what? There aren't a lot of problems up here. They have the 8th lowest violent crime rate in the country, and they lead the nation in drug arrests. They don't F around up here. Everyone up here has a damn gun. And the whole argument that a lot of guns is bad for a community, that's just wrong. It's the way people use guns. That's what matters. Only about 1/3 of folks in Cheyenne vote Democrat. The rest of Wyoming thinks they're way too liberal.
Did you know Wyoming hasn't elected a Democrat for governor since 1994?
Well, hell, I didn't know that, Mappy. Why do you think that is?
'Cause they're smart.
You know what, Mappy? I'm going to give you your gun back for the rest of this trip. You've earned it. So why do people even come to Cheyenne? Like, what draws people up here to 6,000 feet above sea level? Well, I asked a friend who lived here for a long time, and he told me it's isolation, independence, guns, peace and quiet, and laid back, and cowboy shit. That's why. But they have more than just cowboy shit. There's a lot of government jobs here. There's an Air Force base nearby. And there's some energy jobs and railroading. And they have a gun factory in town. That's so Wyoming, right? But even if you're not macho, there's something for everyone here. You might be shocked to hear that Microsoft has a data center here, and they're even talking about putting a second one in. And check this out. There's a supercomputer here in Cheyenne. I know, right? I don't think they'd hire you, but maybe. Or if you're not a nerd, there's some medical jobs and teaching, and, people just figure it out.
I could go in up here.
I think it's neat here, actually. Cheyenne's a capital city without a major university, which is kind of odd, but there's plenty to do. For fun, they have live music down here every week. There's even a theater with Broadway shows and a symphony. I know, Wyoming has a theater. A lot of the blue-collar crowd hangs out at the macho steakhouses, and others throw back some suds at one of the tough joints in town. That's where I spent most of my time. I'll give you a full tour of that later. But I asked around, and people seem to be happy with the chains in town. Buffalo Wild Wings, Olive Garden, Red Lobster, Texas Roadhouse. If you want ethnic, it's going to be one of 10 Mexican joints, or Panda Express. That's it, really. I mean, there's a Facebook page called There's Nothing to Do in Cheyenne, and it has 798 members. I messaged a few of them. They didn't respond. If you want to see a real hoot, come here in the last week of July for Cheyenne Frontier Days. That's a big deal. Rodeos, music, barbecue, pig roasts, gun shows. It's coming up. There's signs about it all over town. I just missed it by a couple weeks. Half the people I talked to said, you should come back here for Frontier Days. And then half the people said, do not come here during Frontier Days. It's a shit show. Rooms are like $2,000 a night. Okay, so what's it like to live here? Well, as you can see, downtown's pretty laid back. There aren't any parking structures or traffic or hubbub. The biggest building in town is just 5 stories. But the downtown's clean. I didn't really see any empty storefronts. I think there's just enough here to suit people's needs. I think a lot of people in town don't want more. I didn't see many bums. Just a few laying around, which was a welcome relief. I think Wyoming people would say there's some sketchy people downtown. And I'd tell them, you have no idea how scary it is out there. I mean, the day before I'd been in Denver, and that place is a racket, let me tell you. But since Cheyenne's at the intersection of I-80 and I-25, they get their fair share of rejects passing through. And there's a drug problem here, just like any other place in the country. But I didn't see really any of that. That's good. Don't feed them, and they'll keep moving. I don't see any bums. No tents here. If this park was in the downtown of California, you wouldn't even want to walk across the street. That's the old railroad depot downtown. Cheyenne would not exist without that place. They say this was a hell on wheels town. The railroads needed thousands of people to build them. So a lot of people would come in, and then they had to build hotels and saloons and bring in prostitutes to keep everybody happy. Of course, that led to gambling and drinking and debauchery and murder, but things have calmed down here since. Besides the railroads, cattle was a huge deal here. Wyoming's the perfect place for raising cattle. And then gold was a big deal. With all that cattle and gold, Cheyenne was the richest city in the world in the late 1800s. I know, right? And then there was a huge freeze in the 1890s, and a lot of cattle died. And, well, there went that. Now, before I got here, I thought Cheyenne was going to be all Wild West cowboy stuff. I mean, that's what you see on TV. And I was right and wrong. It's not as pick-up-y as I thought it would be. This is Wyoming, damn it. I thought everybody in town would have a truck like this. Or like this. Or this. But a lot of people here have regular cars. That was kind of boring. But there's still lots of reminders about the cowboy days here. First of all, they have all these boots around town. They're called the Cheyenne Big Boots. And there's a boot tour. Boots. There's 2 boots. This one has the Jeffersons on it. Why are the Jeffersons on a boot? Is Sherman Helmsley from here? Maybe he is. I don't know. A lot of places in town have these boot wiping brushes out front. You know, to get all the cow shit off. Roadkill. Intense, Wyoming. The Texas Roadhouse in town's such a big deal that they have overflow parking and a wait list app. They sure do love their meat here. And they love their guns here. You knew that already. Candy, popcorn, and guns, rifles, pistols, revolvers, and ammo. I guess the kids are carrying here too. Candy and guns. Only in Wyoming, I tell ya. There's cowboy shit all over here. Places to gear up on the latest and oldest in Western apparel. Just dandy. Out west and outstanding, everyone. Ladies, huh? There's another place in town called Cowgirls of the West. You can buy stuff and then you can look at old Western heritage. I think this is how Wyoming people dressed in the 1800s. Maybe. And then there's the Wrangler. Now, this place is as buckaroo as you can get. And of course, it's the biggest store in town. And OMG. You walk into the Wrangler and you're immediately hit in the face with the smell of leather. They need to bottle that smell. It's just like when you walk into a donut shop. You can't go into a donut shop and not buy a donut. It just calls to you. They have everything you need here. Redneck shit, regular cowboy shit, belts, stuff I don't even know what it's for. They got all the hats for all the people. Every color cowboy hat you can think of.
If I lived here, I'd be a real cowgirl. I'd make TikToks on my horse every day.
I bet you would, little mappy kid, little buckaroo. This guy's shaping a hat using a process involving steam and pressure. I think this is where most people shop for clothes. Not just a, I need a new hat place. Like a, I need some pants, some socks, some shoes, some underwear place. So of course I had to gear up. I even tossed my old buckle into the old buckle basket. How do I look? JK, I didn't walk around Cheyenne like that. Come on now. I know what I'm doing. But people told me before I came here, they're like, Cheyenne's not as old school cowboy as it once was. It's getting more progressive, and it's kind of ditching its cowboy ways a little bit. Somebody told me it's becoming Cheyenne chic. I was like, what are you talking about? This place is loaded with Western shit. But then I guess you look around a little bit and you start to see what they're talking about. Is this what they meant by Cheyenne chic? No, that is Cheyenne chic right there. I don't care what you say. I wish I had that shirt, actually. Now that is chic. And this is Cheyenne chic. Alexis Drake designer handbags. Fancy indeed. It smells like leather in here, but not the manly leather smell you get over at the Wrangler. Some of this looks like some stuff that a wealthy cowgirl or cowboy might wear, I guess. So what do the neighborhoods look like? Well, the south side of Cheyenne's the worst side, and the north end is much nicer. We're going to start out showing the nice part of Cheyenne, even though most of you want to see poverty because you're sick. This is the fancy part of town. This is just glorious, isn't it? Just 2 miles outside of town, and you'll find a lot of homes with mile-long dirt driveways. Kind of makes you want to hitch your wagon and stake a claim, huh? A place to live in this part of town will run you anywhere between $650K to well over $1 million. This one right here is for sale for $1.3 million. But look at some of these houses. Just living life out on the plains like they did in 1883. But you can get to Walmart in 20 minutes, so you're not completely helpless. I'm going to bet a lot of these people are retired, because I don't know where there is to work that's not doctor, lawyer, government stuff. Maybe some are ranchers. I don't know. I guess I should have asked some of them. Look at all that land. I bet they don't have to worry about any riffraff coming up here. That's a way to get a bullet between your eyebrows. I'm guessing everybody up here carries. I bet some of these folks have a stockpile of weapons. I would, anyway. And there's regular hoods out here in the country part of town, too. Something for everyone, I tell you. There's even some new homes out here. Here's what the regular hoods look like here. Cheyenne's middle class. The average home price in Cheyenne's about $360K as of this writing. It's about on par with the national average. But they're only trickling up, only about 1% a year. I don't know, if you want peace and quiet and don't mind getting blown around in snowbanks for 6 months a year, this might not be too bad. Lower crime, friendly people, easy place to raise kids. I don't think anybody but the business owners downtown want any more people moving in. Can't blame them. Not when they see how we mess up everything else in the country with our ways. But it takes a certain type of person to live here because of the weather. Super hot summers, and the winters are just cold and windy. And I think you have to love the outdoors to really thrive here. Everybody says the south side's the crummy part of town. This is the older section where crime's the highest. You might be surprised to hear that crime in this part of town's kind of high. I mean, it's higher than the national average. But most of that's property crime, robberies, shoplifting, people taking catalytic converters. There's a handful of murders here a year. Again, an armed society can be a polite society when people have sense. Drug use doesn't seem to be a major issue here. I think DUIs are a bigger problem here, to be honest. Most everything in this part of town's in the $250K range. Not too bad, huh? I wouldn't live here, but people seem to enjoy it. Seems really quiet. And for a bad side of town, this isn't bad. I mean, I took an hour in this area driving around looking for something worth recording. I couldn't find it. Just some rundown trailer parks in a couple spots, and that was it. But no matter what part of town you're in, it can be hard to get a house here. They go fast. We're gonna go inside of T. Joe's and have a steak. So on my first night in Cheyenne, I wanted to eat like the locals. So I had to dress like the locals. And remember that coat? I got that in Durango like a week before. Ah, T-Joe's. I wish they had a T-Joe's where I live. Totally old Wyoming. Like the good old days. Look at the menu and how many cuts of meat they have at T-Joe's. Hard to choose which one. I wound up getting the salad and the Miller Lite. JK, come on now. I got the meatloaf and a baked potato. I think from this point on, I ate a big cut of meat every night until I got to Boise. And that was 3 weeks. Sitting back, eating this with some Mel McDaniel and Conway Twitty on the jukebox. What a good first night in real America land. And I'm not going to lie, I think me being all gussied up like this got me some extra purty smiles from the waitress. She even gave us a free dessert. And of course, there's a lot of beer drinking going on here. Come on now. Wyoming ranks as one of the biggest drinking states. I spent some time at the Outlaw Saloon, which is probably the best country hangout I've seen since my days at the old Brandon Iron in San Bernardino. Look at how many bars this place has. Good Lord. I was there for happy hour. Well, apparently it's always happy hour here. It's 11 a.m. to midnight on Tuesdays. Happy hour is 11 to 6 on regular days. Happy day, right? I can only imagine how many boot scooting boogies happen on that dance floor. I've never seen a place with a no spurs sign out front or rifles. There's places you can bring rifles into here. But I just sat there sipping my Miller Lite, watching rodeo in for a bit. And I thought, you know what? I like Wyoming. I spent a little time at their local history museum, because you can't really know a place until you know its past. They have all kinds of neat stuff in here. Old stagecoaches, lots of old stagecoaches, mini stagecoaches, good gracious. I think Abe Lincoln sat in one of these once, or owned one of them. When we were in town, we stayed at the famous Nagel Warren Mansion. Wonderful place. Lots of history here. And look at my room. A total throwback to when people had style and there was detail to how you made your home. And the breakfast menu, howdy. Real fancy like breakfast every morning too. I guess important people choose to stay here at this place when they're at the state capitol for business, like politicians and rich tech execs. And also apparently, the owner, Jazz Barbie, is a big-time chef and knows everyone in Hollywood. And now he knows me. I hear the place is haunted. Well, you know me, I had to find out. Stick around to the end of the video to see me go on a real ghost hunt in this place. The second night, we went to the Albany. It's downtown. We got an early supper there. Neat place. Real cowboy-like. Bull nuts. That's the second time I saw that on this trip. I already tried that in Colorado. I did not like it, and I will not eat it again. Instead, I went for the steak salad. And then I washed my din down with a couple drinks at Scooters. Neat place, wonderful people, highly recommend it. A real Wyoming dive bar. My first Wyoming dive bar. My kind of place. Look at that. That second night I went outside to enjoy the evening. And I thought, I don't just like Wyoming. I love Wyoming. I kind of thought I would. My kind of people. My kind of place. And of course, that downtown Wild West shootout event. They do it every night in the summer. There's a group in town that puts this production on, and they show you how things used to be here. You know, gunfights over really nothing. Any reason to pull your pistol out. This wasn't the first time I'd see some gunslinging in this state, either. So we were just hanging out watching the show, and then they put me in the damn show. Had me pretend I was getting hung for cattle rustling. Crowd loved it, told me I was a great actor, and I don't think anybody here even knew who I was.
That is not John Wayne.
That's John Wayne. You did it perfect.
I did it
You
right.
did it perfect. You did it perfect. But I don't know.
You're going to hurt yourself. Be careful.
45 years of marriage, you never given her a flower?
And to top it off, they even gave us 2 cowboy hats. That makes 3 cowboy hats in my possession in only 2 days in Wyoming. My first 2 days in Wyoming were everything I could have hoped they'd be. And you know what? I really like this place. Now, is Cheyenne for me? No, but it's a great place to raise in a family, or to retire, or to be a cowboy. America ain't touched it yet, and that's good. People here are hardy and are good at enduring. They don't make them like that anymore. And while every single western state's exploding, I mean all of them, Utah, Arizona, Nevada, Colorado, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming really isn't. It's just kind of existing. So many of us are looking for that small town feel, but Wyoming isn't on anyone's radar. At least not yet. But you ask anyone in Wyoming how they feel about that, and I'm sure they tell you, they're just fine with being anonymous. They don't want you or I to come. No, they're just fine the way they are.
How was your visit to Cheyenne in Wyoming?
Well, I liked Cheyenne a lot. I had never been to Wyoming before, and I kind of saw some of the stuff that I wanted to see. I think Cheyenne was a little bit less macho cowboy-y than I expected it to be.
Yeah.
I thought I was going to see beat up pickup trucks everywhere and like dudes walking around in boots. And I saw some of that, but man, Cheyenne is a really real modern city, I have to say.
It's I shouldn't say it's trying to be. That sounds a little rude, but the way that we kind of put it is, I grew up in Cheyenne, and when I was growing up, that's pretty much what it was. It was like you would see a picture of Cheyenne from 1910, and then a picture of Cheyenne in 2010, and they were proud that it hasn't changed that much. But then my generation's kind of taken the baton, and now there's stuff you'd never believe. I mean, we have graffiti festivals where they let people paint up the streets, and there's music festivals every Friday in the summer and stuff. So they're really growing and evolving. But for the longest time, it was definitely about that sort of cowboy culture. I once heard a stand-up comedian refer to it as one big Walmart parking lot, which I thought was funny. But
Well,
how did you go through other places in Wyoming?
Yeah. Well, I'm curious to know how do the old timers in Cheyenne feel about the change that the younger folks are trying to do? Are some of the old timers set in their ways and trying to say, what the hell is this graffiti crap?
Sometimes, it's kind of funny because Cheyenne has this really interesting balance that is what makes it so wonderful, and what also made it so difficult growing up in is that when I was growing up in Cheyenne, I wasn't a farm boy or a cowboy or anything like that. As you can kind of see around me, I'm into music and art and all sorts of stuff. And so I didn't really feel like there was a place for me in town, which is why I moved away to Los Angeles for so long. And so many people my age did. It was kind of like if you grew up in Cheyenne, you had to get out because of how slow things were to change. But the interesting thing is that then the pandemic hit. And so I moved back because, the joke was for us to be 10 feet apart, or for us to be 6 feet apart in Wyoming, we had to come 10 feet closer to one another. You know what I mean? Because everything's so far apart. But what I realized is Cheyenne and Wyoming, just since its inception, has kind of had this vibe of like, we are who we are and we're not going to change for anybody. And we're not going to let anything change us. And so because of that, anytime anyone does introduce change, they're very, very, very slow to it. They're like, listen, we're trying to preserve this way of life. We like the fact that everybody has space. We like the fact that everybody has land. We like the fact that nobody's in a rush or in a hurry to do anything. So what you kind of have to do is go through this painstaking process of going, hey, we'd like to liven things up. It's going to be great. And then the pushback is, okay, so long as everybody still gets to keep their space and peace and all of that, and so it's all about finding that balance. And it's funny because now, I have children and I am doing to my children what my parents did to me, where I'm like, no. I'm going to raise you in this town where you don't have to worry about going to the grocery store at 12 years old on your bike and can come back at any time. Whereas when I was in LA, my son had to hold my hand until he was at least 35. That's when I trust him to be alone. You know what I mean?
Well, a lot of people, I tried to show people a little bit about Cheyenne. I'm curious to know what Cheyenne thinks about the rest of America.
Oh, that's a really, really good question. I think the most zen part of Cheyenne, honestly, is I think if you were to interview 10,000 people from Cheyenne about what they think of the rest of America, they would just simply say they don't care. Like everybody here just minds their own business and does their own thing all of the time. And that's what makes it really cool. It's very, very community focused. So even when I came back from LA, despite the fact that I was born and raised here, I was gone for 10 years. And when I wanted to do a lot of projects, they were kind of like, all right, but I mean, how serious are you about staying and sticking around? And how much do you care about the community itself? And once you kind of prove that you're here for the long haul and everything you want to do is going to enrich Cheyenne as a city, then all hands on deck. They're like, how can we help you? Who do we know? How do you get connected? How can we make this happen? Even recently, we just had a gentleman named Ivan Moody, who's the lead singer of Five Finger Death Punch, moved to our town. And at first, there was like this kind of backlash because it was like, oh, this is a big time rock star. And then he came and started opening up these wonderful businesses in the community. And now he's a community member and everyone just knows him as Ivan. And, they fight real hard to keep that safe, small town feel, if that makes any sense. But to be fair, it does put you in a bit of a bubble because I know I was in culture shock when I moved to LA from Cheyenne. I couldn't even walk down the street because there was more businesses on Hollywood Boulevard than there is in my entire city. You know what I mean? So it was very overwhelming.
Well, how has it changed? So, going to talk politics just a little bit.
Yeah.
I went to Utah, Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, Idaho, and the talk of the town was how it's changing and politics and all these people are moving in and trying to change shit. I didn't get that vibe in Wyoming at all. I didn't get the vibe that, to be honest, I don't think a lot of people are moving there. That's not on people's radar that they're like, I'm going to go to Wyoming and start a new life and change shit.
Right.
Am I right about that?
Well, totally. And you know what? I mean, Wyoming is the least populated state in the whole nation. We're the fifth largest landmass state. So the state itself is huge, as I'm sure you saw driving through it. But we are the least populated state. And it's funny because, you know, being from Wyoming, I'd even go down to Colorado, which is only 90 miles away. And I'd say I'm from Wyoming and people wouldn't even know where that is. Being like neighbors, you know what I mean? I mean, I had a joke, but it's true, is when I lived in LA, the second I told someone I was from Wyoming, their mind immediately went to the next relevant state. You know, I'd be like, yeah, I'm from Wyoming. And they're like, oh, how is Montana? They just immediately forget and go right to the, you know. But the funny thing is that really does work out in our favor, because if I'm not mistaken, speaking politically, even though Wyoming's the least populated state, we are the most libertarian state by like per capita. So again, everybody's just sort of raised with this culture of like, I'm going to do my own thing and I'll be cool with you doing your own thing, so long as it doesn't prevent me from doing my own thing, you know? And that's really how it is. Now, granted, politically, you know, we do have very, and have had for the longest time, very conservative leadership and, you know, very right-leaning politics. But that said, I mean, even that is changing as time evolves, because you get folks who are of my generation, and everybody has kind of a little bit more of a nuanced approach to it, you know, whereas as just a practical example, I remember when I was maybe 12, 13 years old, the band Kiss was going to come perform in Cheyenne. And there were some of the old elderly community that was just protesting this idea. They were like, KISS stands for Knights in Satan's Service. And, you know, which is funny because to my generation, KISS, you know, their music's like, I wanna rock and roll. It's so easygoing. You know what I mean? It's like really, we don't really see the big deal about it. And now here we are 10 years later, we just had free concerts in the streets of like bands like Saliva and 303, and like everything from heavy metal to hip hop to all sorts of stuff. So I feel like Cheyenne is evolving with the culture, with just the passing of the baton from generation to generation. However, it still maintains a very conservative safety net, so to speak, which is just saying like any change, they just want it to be real slow, real gradual, you know. Quick little tidbit that I think summarizes it perfectly to show you how Cheyenne's changing, but also how it's such a small town. I used to work as a radio DJ, and we wanted to bring in the artist Tech9, the rapper, to Cheyenne, but the only place that was big enough was the City Event Center. And we were told no. We said that they didn't want to have it. And the reason they gave was because he was named after a gun. Okay. So we went in and we could just have a meeting with the mayor at the time. This was about 12 years ago. We just walked into the mayor's office and was just like, hey, are you busy? And he was having a Subway sandwich. He's like, no, sit down. Let's talk. And that's how easy it was to get a meeting with the mayor. So we sat down and talked with him, and we were like, you said we can't have this show because he's named after a gun. However, you guys just had the Cheyenne Gun Show at this place, and it said the Cheyenne Gun Show will blow you away. So that kind of seems like a bogus excuse. And this mayor, to his credit, looked at me and he went, listen, guys. He was like, I don't mind you guys having your concert or anything like that. But he's like, you know who complain is old people. And you know who vote? Old people. And that means those old people determine my job. So I don't want to make them mad. He's like, if you could get your demographic, like 18 to 35-year-olds, to go to the polls and vote, then I would be a little more inclined to make you guys happy. But at the end of the day, if I make you guys happy and make them mad, they're going to go to the polls and vote me out. So I really have no reason to satisfy you guys. And in a weird way, I kind of appreciated that transparency. And he let us have the show, by the way. Okay. But now we're to an age where we're in our 30s. We have the kids. We're leading the businesses. And we are going to the polls and voting. And actually, some of the political candidates are people I went to high school and college with now. So that's what I mean when I say things are kind of shifting in a more interesting and eclectic and colorful direction, as you saw when you were in town. But the one thing that I don't think you're ever going to change is that don't tread on me ethos. I think that's just in everyone's bones. I think, especially my generation, and especially in Cheyenne, I think a lot of people are very middle of the road. What I mean by that is everybody might have their own political opinions and stuff, but everybody kind of tends to leave each other alone. However, if there are those extremes, you would be you would be able to walk about much more easily if you had a Make America Great Again shirt and a Confederate flag flying off the back of your giant pickup than you would if you had, let's say, like a Black Lives Matter thing, on your Prius and you're driving around. I think you'd stand out a little more and you might get a little more loud comments or anything like that. But all that to say, I got friends with Priuses and Black Lives Matters, stickers on their cars. And, our kids all go to the same school as the folks with the Trump flags and stuff like that. So, I don't imagine it's any different than any other city as far as people just needing to kind of integrate and get along and everything like that. But to answer your question, yes, you'd get by with a lot less dirty looks, questions, and potential harassment on the right leaning side than you would the left. That's for sure.
Ghosts? I never see the ghosts. Ghosts? Is there a ghost in here? Is there a ghost in here? Is there a ghost in here? How come I never see the ghosts? Nice view though. Downtown Cheyenne. Ghost? don't see any ghosts. I'm not going down there. No ghosts. There's never any ghosts anywhere. Never. Are you looking to move and need advice? I do consulting. That's right. I'll sit down and talk about where the next perfect place for you and your family should be. I do it all the time. Together, let's find you a new home that's safe and checks all your boxes. And I can also help you find your new house, too. Email me and I'll work with you. I'm not just helping you figure out where to move, but I can help you find your perfect home, too. That's right. I know awesome, reliable agents all over the country, and I'd love to connect you to somebody who can help you search for that perfect home. Hey guys, if you learned something new about America or what it's like to live in America, great. You should think about subscribing and turning on your notifications. You can also click one of these videos or playlists for more.
This is Sage, Nick's manager. This has been a Corner House Entertainment production.